Hi, my name is Niall Kuyak, General Manager of the Agriculture Producers Association of Saskatchewan. It's my pleasure to review with you this presentation that illustrates how effective and progressive farm policy can empower farmers. The presentation also illustrates the return on investment provided by membership in APAS. This slide illustrates our President, Greg Marshall. It reinforces the fact that APAS is a democratically controlled general farm lobby organization established to advance the interests of Saskatchewan farmers and ranchers. At APAS, we believe that our mission is to improve the economic well-being of Saskatchewan's agricultural producers. The vision, a future where agriculture is profitable, rural communities are viable, and the role of agriculture in society is recognized and appreciated, speaks to the aspirations of our members. The Board of Directors, rural municipal representatives, and staff of APAS work together as a team, focusing on key policy areas. We've recommitted the organization to honesty, integrity, and transparency in terms of how we deal with our members and how we deal with stakeholders. This slide illustrates the APAS membership structure. It's important to remember that the rural municipality is the member of APAS, and once the rural municipality joins, ratepayers in the municipality are then deemed to be the members. Once the rural municipality joins APAS, it selects or appoints a representative for that RM. 2 directors from each district are elected at our annual general meeting for 1-year terms. We have 6 districts, the same districts as SARM. The 12-member board of directors annually elects the president and 2 vice presidents as the executive committee of the organization, and representatives and board members serve on 4 policy committees that provide direction and expertise to the board. These are the Grains and Oilseeds, Livestock, Environment and Food Safety, and Economic Trade and Strategic Growth committees. If you're not at the table, you're likely on the menu is the explanation of a reeve of a member municipality as to why he feels it's important for his rural municipality to be a member of APAS. APAS is a link to CFA. That reeve that I just referred to views it important that Saskatchewan have a connection to CFA. This slide illustrates that we participate in the CFA Board of Directors, in the Executive and the National Council and committees. Our President, Greg Marshall, chairs the National Grains and Oilseeds Committee of CFA. As the general farm organization in Saskatchewan, APAS provides farmer input into a variety of other organizations, some of which are very important to the ag industry. This slide illustrates those organizations. The Western Grain Standards Committee is an example of a committee that deals with grain standards and issues in the quality of grain from year to year, and where it's very important that farmers be represented. I would also note the Prairie Farm Leaders, where Wild Rose Agriculture Producers, Keystone Agriculture Producers, and APAS work together collaboratively on issues that are of a regional basis. In 2010-11, APAS has been pursuing 10 key policy issues. They're outlined on this slide. I'm not going to comment on them further because the purpose of this presentation is not to discuss policy in depth. Anyone interested in these policy issues and wanting further information or discussion is invited to contact our office. Really, the purpose of this presentation is to illustrate the value in APAS membership, the dollars and cents of APAS membership. For this discussion, we've constructed a typical member's farm, which we're describing as mixed grain and livestock, having a total of 2,000 acres, 1,500 acres which would be planted annually, and the other 500 acres would be used for a 50-head livestock operation. At 2,000 acres, at 6 cents an acre, this farmer would pay an annual fee to APAS of $120 per year. One of the early achievements of APAS in farm policy was in the early part of this decade, where APAS lobbying ended up in more federal money being directed to the province of Saskatchewan. This slide illustrates that in the years 2002, 2003, and 2005, $2,175,000,000 was made available in federal payments across Canada. Under the Fredericton formula, Saskatchewan would have received 22% of that amount, or $479 million. APAS lobbied at the CFA table and nationally for Saskatchewan to receive a higher percentage of that money because of the fact that grains and oilseed producers in Saskatchewan had been particularly hard hit in the late 1990s and the early part of this decade. Canadian Federation of Agriculture members supported the APAS position, and through negotiation with the federal government, the split for Saskatchewan became 29%, or $628 million. So this lobby effort by APAS, supported by the CFA members, ensured that Saskatchewan would receive $149 million over those 3 years in federal government payments. That translated into $503,000 more per RM, or $3,000 more per farmer. So we looked at the historic achievements of APAS. Now we'll talk about some of the current achievements. APAS in 2008 began to lobby for support to the livestock industry in Saskatchewan because of the difficulties that hog and cattle producers had been experiencing. In February of 2009, Minister Benrod announced the Saskatchewan Cattle and Hog Support Program, which paid $40 an animal. So, for our typical APAS farm of 50 head, that $40 per head translated into $2,000 received, and the total program had a value of $71 million. In 2010, the Pasture Recovery Program was announced by federal and provincial governments as a result of lobbying by organizations like APAS and others. $50 per breeding animal was paid in northwestern Saskatchewan. So for our typical APAS farm, again with 50 head at $50, this farm family would have received $2,500 from this program, a total program value of $114 million. The APAS membership for that farm is $120. APAS began very early in the growing season last year to recognize that an excess moisture problem was emerging, and we began to lobby in June and July for compensation to farmers. In early July, at the Canadian Federation of Agriculture Roundtable with federal provincial ministers, our president, Greg Marshall, had the privilege and honor of putting forth the case for compensation to Saskatchewan farmers to federal and provincial ministers. Later in July, the excess moisture payment program of $30 per acre was announced. To this 2,000-acre farm, assuming that 15% of his acres were unseeded, that would have resulted in a payment of $6,750 to this farm family. Again, the APAS membership is $120. This slide illustrates the money that's been put in this farm family's pocket over the case of 2009 and 10 through those 3 programs. A total of $11,250 over those 3 programs in those 2 years would have represented a return of investment of $46.86 for the $240 spent on the APAS membership for those 2 years. As we look to the future, there are some big ticket policy issues that APAS is involved in that have very significant financial impact on farmers. One of the priorities that we've been pursuing is the need for a railway costing review. In 2008 and 9, it was estimated that farmers overpaid $8.81 per ton for the grain that they moved from their farms. If one assumes that this 1,500-acre farm would have had a yield of a ton per acre, it means that this individual would have overpaid by $13,215 for the movement of the grain from that farm, and that Western Canadian farmers overpaid $275 million in 2008-2009. APAS and our allies are fighting for a costing review because we want to see this money go into the pockets of farmers. Carbon credits is a priority issue for us as well. The slide shows a picture of a smokestack and a question of equity with Alberta. As carbon credit trading rules are being finalized in Saskatchewan, APAS is concerned that farmers receive fair value for the carbon sequestration that they provide. This slide illustrates that in Alberta, the black soil zone received payments of $1.58 per acre, or the brown soil zone of 88 cents per acre, giving that 2,000 acre farm additional revenue of $3,160 for black soil, or $1,760 for brown soil. So we're concerned that the compensation to farmers be in this range, and that there also be retroactivity to 2006 as the province of Alberta had. The top three programs we already talked about and illustrate what farmers, this farm family already received from the government programs in 2009 and 10 as a result of APAS lobbying. The bottom two programs represent what is at stake as we deal with these issues. These dollars, $13,215 for railway costing or $3,160 for carbon credits, are very significant amounts that would add to the farm family income. So the question that farmers and farm families need to ask themselves is, what is it worth to have a farm organization that works for your betterment of your future? Is 6 cents an acre too much to invest in an organization that represents your interests at provincial and federal levels? Farmers need to think about what other professions pay for similar representation and compare the low cost of APAS membership to what trade union or professional membership might cost other professions. It's your future. You need to make that decision.